Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to AP Live for European History. It's a beautiful day in Minneapolis. My name is Todd Beach, and I teach at Eastview High School in Apple Valley, Minnesota. It's a suburb of Minneapolis and St. Paul. The sun is shining here today. Perfect day to learn along with myself and Katie.
Hi, good morning. I'm Katie Lancey. I teach at Coral Gables Senior High. It's a suburb of Miami, Florida. It's beautiful here today as well. Happy Monday of our last week with you guys. We're excited to go over the DBQs you wrote over the weekend. Did a really, really great job as you continue, and we've got practice for you. Todd's going to go over our calendar.
So putting this together this past weekend, I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's our last week. And then I started thinking back to when we started. And can you believe everything we have gone through? Because so many of you have been with us since the very first day. So this is where we started back on March 25th. And we did all this, first of all, this 20th century stuff, right? And then we started to review. And we did our first DBQ practice on the 10th of April. We did another one on the 17th, and we gave feedback all along. And then here we are currently, we did the feedback on the 20th, and another DBQ practice on the 24th, and the feedback on the 27th, and then another DBQ you just wrote on Friday. And then I want you to notice too, in case you're ever interested in going back and looking at any of those, because you're like, oh, I really want that DBQ and print that out, you can go to video 23. So I've kind of archived that. I'm giving you a little bit of a table of contents, if you will, to the videos. So here we are on the 4th. We're going to give some feedback, as Katie said. We have a few slides from College Board to go through exam logistics. These are slides that if your teachers have been sharing some things with you, they may look familiar, but we're going to talk through them. And we have homework for you today. And then we've told you we have question and answer coming. So today's question and answer is going to be all about exam logistics. And then a lot of you are asking questions about the exam strategies as well, and some miscellaneous things. And that Q&A will be on the 6th. Tomorrow we have a DBQ for you, and it's going to be a virtual proctoring one. So you don't have to be on live with us. If you are, that's great. But it's a simulated one. So you will still submit it into us, but we're going to have, I'll get you started and we'll have a clock counting down and everything. But if you can't do it while we're live, you can still do the video at your normal time that you're doing the video. Katie will be with you on Thursday. So it's the same thing. You'll have a different DBQ to practice. We'll give feedback from the 5th DBQ on the 6th. We'll give feedback from the 7th DBQ on the 8th. And we have some guests coming that we're really excited about. This gets you all ready for that exam on the 13th, okay? All right. Katie, you want to talk through this?
Sure, yeah. So today we're going to go through that Imperialism DBQ. We're going to show you what we've done in the past and go through the different score points. And then this time we're also going to show you a full, complete DBQ. And then we have some exam logistics slides, as Todd said. And then I've just taken word for word a bunch of questions that we got. We may not have your exact question because the questions were repeated over and over again. So we're just going to go through these questions and answer them the best we can and give you information.
Great. So we'll get straight into our warm-up. And we asked you again last Friday to write one of these modified 5-document DBQs. If you're just joining us and you didn't see that DBQ, you can go to the last video. We always place them in the description area under the video on the YouTube page. You may have to click show more, but that's where it's linked, okay? All right, so I'll do contextualization and thesis. This response is from Ethan at Corona High School. We get a lot of kids from Corona High School submitting their stuff, so thank you so much. And I'll just read it out loud here. During La Belle Epoque, there was a rise in the idea of imperialism. Many European countries adopted this idea of imperialism and used it to help conquer lands in Africa and China. Countries such as Britain, France, and Belgium all exercised a harsh rule over their new African colonies by torturing the natives and using them for their own personal gain. They would overwork the natives and give them severe punishment if they were to go against their masters. That is contextualization. It describes a broader historical development that occurs before the time frame of the question, and it is definitely relevant to our prompt. Ethan started broadly and then kind of narrowed it down. We're going to transition right into the thesis. During the late 1800s, imperialism was primarily caused by political motives because of European countries' desire to establish superiority over the others and also countries wanting to prove that they are more a powerful force that should not be challenged. So we definitely taken our position caused by political motives, because our question was, question had whether it was caused primarily by political motives or economic motives. So you need to take a position, and you've taken a position here, and we've established a line of reasoning because countries desire to establish superiority over the others. And then the other line is to prove they were a more powerful force that should not be challenged. So these seem similar in their line of reasoning, but I can tell you that Ethan hashes out the differences between those two. But that's definitely going to count. Both, that's going to get the point for contextualization. It's definitely going to get the point for thesis. So well done, Ethan. Here is one that earns the point for contextualization minimally, and I'll explain why, because it looks like they've written a lot, but does not earn the point for thesis. So here we go. The age of nationalism, and a lot of you did this. You started talking about nationalism, which is okay, but I got a little nervous because the prompt is about new imperialism. So we have to make sure we're talking about the right thing and don't go off on a tangent here. So the age of nationalism was a time of great change for Europeans with the formation of new nations out of many individual states. This new way of thinking united these states with the belief in the superiority of their country, and the value of the nation is greater than that of the individual. Throughout Europe, newly formed nations such as Italy want to establish themselves on the world stage. This led to a new age of imperialism, with countries desperate to establish themselves in other parts of the world. So this does work. You can see we kind of hang around nationalism quite a bit, and then we get transitioned into imperialism, and we kind of give a definition, of a loose, implicit definition of what that is there. And I'm going to say it earns it minimally because it's just, if we're using Italy, which yes, they did imperialize, I think, Ethiopia, but it's not the greatest example, but it does work. It's not wrong. It's just not the greatest example. So I think that's going to earn the point. And as I said, minimally for contextualization. It's a little confused because we have this whole narrative of nationalism. And I get that nationalism and imperialism are kind of intertwined here. But if the prompt is talking about imperialism and new age of imperialism, we have to get to that prompt. So we do get to it here. So I say we do earn the point. Here's the thesis, though. This new imperialism was primarily a political movement because countries viewed colonies as a symbol of power and a way to prevent the expansion of rival states. However, the age of imperialism was primarily an economic movement because European nations relied on colonial resources and saw the rest of the world as an opportunity to expand capitalist interests. However, one could argue that the motivations for the age of imperialism were the same as the age of exploration: God, gold, and glory. So this is going to be one that's going to be super problematic. If we were at the reading, this would probably pass through so many minds because it doesn't really take a position, right? We've taken 3 positions, but the prompt asks you to evaluate, which means you weigh the information and you need to make a claim. Otherwise, what we're doing is we're just going to say, well, it did this and it did this and it did this. When we say evaluate, you need to take a position and make a claim. Okay. So I would argue that it does not earn the point for thesis on this.
And Todd, can I just chime in here really quickly? And some of the questions that we have gotten are based on the structure that you've been showing students. And there's this alternative view of the evidence. And they've already, we see that the DBQ is going to lead students into different directions. And should they include that nod to the other side in their thesis? The problem with what you're seeing here is that there's no nod. They're actually answering it with the same sort of strength in all these different places. And I really like it when students acknowledge the minimal, other argument, counter argument at the beginning of their essay, but that's not what this student's doing. So a lot of students have asked that, and I want to, sort of distinguish between that and what you're seeing here. I agree with you.
And I completely agree, Katie. It's really this use. They're using the word primarily because that's coming from the stem of the prompt itself. And so, if we're saying it's primarily a political movement, that sounds great. But you could still, even if this language was changed, was secondarily an economic movement, or, minimally or somewhat of an economic movement. Just we need something that gives us the difference between this, right?
Yep. Actually, if they had excluded everything after the word states, starting with however, that would have received credit.
You're right. So, this first part, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's a great learning tool for sure. So I want to give you some examples of students who are using evidence in the documents. And this is, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, Liada from La Jolla High School in California. And the paragraph starts out in the yellow. One of the most significant political motivations for European countries to begin colonization in Africa and Asia was the desperate need for more power, which was sparked by the increase in competition between nation rulers. So really nice topic sentence in that paragraph that that goes back, and that should actually have been political motivations, I'm sorry. And then in the blue, we have in a political cartoon published in the conservative daily French newspaper, Le Petit Journal, we see Queen Victoria and Emperor Wilhelm II fighting over a piece of cake labeled as China, right? So they're describing what's in the document. And this cartoon is basically showing how rulers would battle each other for more territory and have no sympathy or concern for the effects it may have on local people. So we're bringing that back to that political motivation. So that's a nice example, short and sweet, of giving me a document and its contents and then bringing it back to supporting an argument, right? We're looking for supporting an argument using the document. So that's good. And then I wanted to give you, many of you are asking questions about time. And I'm going to give you a couple examples here that I thought spoke towards how you could really effectively use time. And this is from Maddie, and it's funny, I picked a Corona high school as well, maybe where you have Corona on the brain these days. But this is a use of a document to support an argument, and I want you guys to look at this. Did not take a long time. I know sometimes we show you these really long paragraphs, and they're really, really in depth and very analytical, and those are awesome. But for those of you who are worried about time, let's just look at Maddie's response here. The topic sentence started, however, some may believe that imperialism was economically motivated, right? And they've already in their thesis established that line of reasoning. Document 3 supports this, in which Chamberlain, a British economist, we have some attribution there, expresses Britain's depression of trade and poor economic state. And then Maddie brings this back, showing how they might have imperialized due to economic reasons in a speech to Parliament. So it's very short and sweet. It does get the job done. So for those of you who are really, I mean, when I tell you that the number 2 question we're getting is concerns about timing for this DBQ and wanting to do well. So I just wanted to show you an example of someone who uses a document and does it and does their job and tells us what the document says and then minimally relates it back, but still that would definitely get credit.
Yeah, that would get credit for usage of a document for sure. So good example.
All right, and so we had a fair number of these, and Todd and I were kind of talking through it and thinking that we really, really want to get you guys in the habit of putting that topic sentence in the paragraph so that we are sure that we know what your argument is here. So this paragraph started with no topic sentence whatsoever, and it dives right into document 4, a political cartoon published in 1898, shows Queen Victoria and William I fighting over cake representing China. Earlier in 1961, we've moved on to another document. Leopold, heir to the throne of Belgium, explains that the territory of Belgium cannot become larger in Europe because of the surrounding states, but says that colonies will allow that to happen. So there is some just minimal description of the contents of the document, but we have no idea what argument these documents are supposed to be supporting. I mean, I can guess, but it's not our job to guess. It is your job as the writer to be very intentional about showing us how this evidence you're using supports an argument. So there's nothing technically incorrect about what's said in the response, but it is not supporting any argument that we can see. So you have to really be aware of that, to think before you just dive into a description of the documents that you are relating those documents back to an argument, and starting with a topic sentence just lays that out for what your argument's going to be.
Yeah, at the reading, we call this laundry listing documents. Yep. You've got no argument, but you're just basically unpacking, saying document 4 says this, document 5 says this, and that's not the task. That's not what this exercise is. The exercise is to construct a historical argument and then use these pieces of evidence, these sources, to support and substantiate what you're trying to argue about.
I would say that in the responses that we've been seeing, that's the number 1 problem that I'm seeing, is people who just jump in to a description of the documents without any analysis. And so, that's going to limit their ability to do well. All right, so don't freak out when you see this next rather lovely response from Caitlin at Fountain Valley High School in California. There's a lot going on in this paragraph, and I'm not going to read it all to you. You can always pause and take a look at the color coding. This is for someone who received evidence beyond the documents. But the reason I want to show this to you is to go back for a minute and talk about all of these questions that you guys have about how to do this in 45 minutes. So I just wanted to point out that Caitlin did get credit for contextualization and did get credit for her thesis statement. And then I want to show you that if a student wrote 2 body paragraphs like this on 2 separate documents, this has the topic sentence, the description of the document, brings the document back to the argument, sources the document for one of our HAPs, right? This is point of view, and then provides a relevant piece of outside information here at the end in the orange. So 2 paragraphs like this, along with context and thesis that receive credit, would earn the student an 8 out of 10 points with only 2 documents. So for all of you who are really worried about time, I just wanted to put that out there for your consideration to think about, especially as you're practicing with Todd tomorrow and you're timing yourself and you're seeing where you come up at that 45-minute mark. This is a beautifully strong paragraph, but it only takes 2 of these with using 1 document and doing an outside information and a source for that. So, but let's look in orange at the piece of historical evidence. Caitlin has been talking about the document by Joseph Chamberlain. The only thing I would have added was the document number at the end of the whole thing instead of Doc 3 there, but that's totally fine. And after talking about Chamberlain's argument, she then goes on and says, evidence beyond the documents that should be considered, look at that stem that Caitlin used, is that 2 of the African states that the British controlled were Egypt and Sudan. They were especially determined to control these 2 areas because the Suez Canal provided easy access to India, another trading market. This shows another example, back to the argument, of why the British would want to imperialize Africa so that they could gain economically through trade. So this was really relevant, well tied in, outside information, really exceptional paragraph. And so I just wanted to show you guys that because I think that there's so many people who want to use all 5 documents, and there are definitely some decisions to be made about how best to use your time here. Todd, you want to add anything to that?
I think you're bringing up a great point. You can still think through the structure that we've been showing you, but what we're adding here is that because Caitlin's just taking her time to really do a great job with 1 document, source the 1 document, add outside evidence to the document. So, you know, I think it's a great strategy that Katie's pointing out, is because you could use 2 documents and still score 8 out of 10. So it's something to think about as far as, yes, what Katie's saying is great. So you need to make some decisions, especially if you've been struggling against the clock on the practices that we've had.
Right. I just wanted to, again, it's a long paragraph, but if you're thinking that you're only really doing this structure with 2 of the documents, and then, you know, the beautiful thing about the ability to type the exam is that if you get to that point and you still have time, you can certainly continue to add documents to your essay. So I just thought it was a good strategy to consider. I know some of the other histories are throwing that out there, and there are some decisions to make about how someone asks a question, are the points going to be our score? And Todd and I will talk about at the, you know, that's the #1 question we received. How many points will be what score? And that's simply just something that we don't know. But certainly getting these points are going to be how you get your score. So thinking about how to maximize that is really important.
Great.
Okay, and the other one I wanted to show, this is from Camille at John Jay High School in New York. Nice topic sentence again. Nations throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s colonized in an attempt to acquire more power and glory. And then goes on to describe, I won't read the whole thing to you, the Leopold document. And then if down again in the orange, after talking about how this was a motivation for power, there's a nice piece of outside historical information. Prince Leopold proceeded to fulfill this desire to expand upon his ascension to the throne through establishing the International Congo Association in 1878. He was able to gain territory that made Belgium into a more well-regarded and stronger power. So that is absolutely relevant to the argument, a piece of evidence from outside of the documents. Very nice job. Camille, you did a great job with that paragraph.
go through some sourcing from Kaylee from Mount Carmel High School in California. And I should have color coded. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. Anyway, this idea was further expressed in Prince Leopold's letter to one of his advisors. So we have attribution. In the letter, Prince Leopold stated his desire to prove to the world that Belgium was capable of dominating and enlightening others. That's description. And then the historical situation. I really like it when we're sourcing and we just use a stem like this that kind of, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to source historical situation. The historical situation at the time was one that was characterized by a surplus of nationalism. And this is important because it influenced Prince Leopold to believe in the superiority of Belgian culture over other civilizations and fueled his desire to dominate and enlighten others with what he thought to be proper European culture. Doc 1. So I really like that, Kaylee. You did a great job. And it's not super long, but she's used a document. So we have, we're adding to that total of using a document, and we're adding to the total of sourcing a document. And we've had, this is important because, so we certainly are getting the proper analysis of the historical situation. So well done, Kaylee. From Malcolm at Wilton High School in Connecticut. And this is dealing with complexity. So when we were talking about the thesis before, and the one that didn't earn the point, because they kept saying this is the primary argument, this is the primary argument. So Malcolm, this is his third body paragraph, and it's his qualifying argument to consider an alternative view of the evidence. And we've got this up here that kind of signals what's going on. However, these economic causes were limited, as was not the primary goal for European countries during imperialism. So we're going to make this claim that there were some economic reasons too, because the documents certainly point to that. But he's qualifying the argument by saying they were limited and was not the primary goal for European countries during imperialism, get it right eventually, and because that's the argument he's making. He made the argument that there were political reasons first. And then he goes and he unpacks that, and we have the use of a document here, right? And then a use of another document here. And then he restates the primary cause wasn't political because during the time Marxism was socialism and was growing in numbers, so the opposition in capitalism increased. So the implies capitalism and economics is the primary cause for. Did he just argue against himself? I think he did. It looks like he may have argued against himself. So maybe not the best one, because it's a little confused here because now he's saying wasn't political. So sorry about that, Malcolm. But I think it's still probably going to earn the complexity point, given that we're of a time nature of the exam, and we would probably just overlook this small error here. Okay. All right, one of the things we wanted to do was show a full sample. We haven't done that yet. We've been showing you partial samples of each score point. And so it's kind of nice if you can see, okay, what does a full one look like? We get this from readers all the time. They want to know, what does a full one look like that would earn all the points? And, how complex does it need to be? And we could show you lots of different ones, but we have time for one. And so I'll start with the introductory paragraph, and we'll just take turns. And this is from Jordan at Aberdeen Central High School in South Dakota. This is the introductory paragraph, Jordan's introductory paragraph. And it's going to earn the point for contextualization. Industrial Revolution created economic prosperity in Great Britain as new ways to create goods emerged. Society shifted towards a slowly consumerist culture. Speed and efficiency were the name of the game in industrialized Britain, and it had turned the nation into an economic powerhouse. While seeing the success of Britain, nations like Germany and France decided to capitalize on this new economic opportunity. As economic competition grew fiercer, countries demanded more natural resources and markets to sell products. So we definitely have contextualization. We've started with the Industrial Revolution. We've definitely narrowed it into this imperialistic argument. Because of this, imperialism came to define the 1900s. So there's that transition. Then here's our thesis. The new imperialism of the late 1800s or early 1900s was caused primarily by economic motives because of the opportunities imperialism provided to, here's our first line of reasoning, multiply the effects of the Industrial Revolution, as well as the fact that more desired second line of reasoning, desired territories to conquer were ones where money could be made, despite the fact that political motives did play a smaller part in fueling imperialist desires. So you see the nod to the other argument. So there we go. That's the first body paragraph of Jordan.
All right. So as we move on to the body paragraphs, Jordan starts off with this topic sentence that we really like. The new imperialism of the late 1800s or early 1900s was caused primarily by economic motives because of the opportunities imperialism provided to multiply the effects of the Industrial Revolution. Again, back to economics, back to his reason. Really nice job there. Joseph Chamberlain, a British politician, industrialist, and reformer, described in 1888 the need of Britain's colonies. There's really nice attribution there. Chamberlain described how the colonies are needed to feed the people of Great Britain as well as stimulate its economy. So we've got a description of the document. Moving on to Chamberlain approaches this argument as he talks to a chamber of commerce. This chamber would have concerns about continuing Britain's economic prosperity despite the threat of depression. And so Chamberlain crafts his message to address the specific economic concerns. This is important because it shows how Britain's primary colonial focus was to maintain economic strength. So really nice job for sourcing the audience of that document being that chamber. Really nice. We have the document 3 there at the end, and all of that supports that argument, right? So all of that together is a really nice supporting of the argument in that document. I would get credit for that. So then we move on to the next document. Prince Leopold's 1861 letter sends a similar message, right? Really nice attribution. We're still supporting that same argument. It's really, really well done. Leopold describes both the economic and military importance of colonies. However, one knows that his motives are strictly economic because Leopold will go into the following decades to invest a vast amount of his personal fortune into his colonies. Though Leopold is trying to express numerous benefits of imperialism, such as enlightening the locals or, quote, proving to the world that Belgium is superior, Belgium's economic benefits from the Congo show the primarily economic motivations. Again, supporting that argument. There we have Doc 1, really, really nice. Another piece of evidence that supports this argument, there's that very recognizable stem, is how Belgium gained so much money from their colony in the Congo, rubber. With industrialization back home, rubber was in high demand. The rise of the automobile only exacerbated this. Colonies in Africa like the Congo helped Belgium feed this demand and profit greatly. This is important because it shows that the motivations and benefits of having colonies were mostly economic. So we have this lovely piece of outside specific evidence beyond the documents talking about rubber. That's really, really, a really nice first paragraph with 2 documents being used to support the argument.
Really well done. Jordan's on a roll.
Yeah.
So here's Jordan's second body paragraph. Begins with a topic sentence. The new imperialism in the late 1800s, early 1900s was caused primarily by economic motives because more desired territories to conquer were ones where money could be made. So we've got our mini claim, our topic sentence. The German Social Democratic Party discusses at a party meeting, that's our attribution to the document, how colonies are being used for capitalist exploitation. That's a description. In the yellow is the sourcing attempt. So the SDP, Social Democratic Party, addresses this from an anti-colonial point of view, but their opinion is still very valid because it addresses how countries are going after territories where they can push economic interests. Essentially, the party is saying that colonialism is bad because it exploits economies, but it still acknowledges that countries are primarily going after lucrative colonies. So that's very well done for sourcing and point of view. We've wrapped up that document with the document number, and then Jordan continues another example. So we're transitioning and kind of cueing the reader of territories being conquered where money could be made was Britain's imperialist endeavors. Britain acquired Hong Kong after the Opium War. The acquisition of this colony was not to keep an eye on Britain's enemies, but rather to secure its economic prominence in the Pacific for decades to come. Countries like Britain engaging in these wars is important because it shows that desired territories were ones where money was to be made. Supports that argument about economic motives. We've got evidence beyond the document. That's a second usage. So we're going to get 2 points for evidence beyond the documents because we had a point in the first paragraph, and here's a point in the second body paragraph. We've used our third document really well here. So yeah, Jordan is doing, and we've sourced really well. Another really nice paragraph, Jordan.
Yeah, this is really, really well done. And then in the third body paragraph, Jordan takes that other side. So we're looking at the counterclaim that's going to achieve the complexity point. So Jordan starts off, despite economics being the most significant driver of imperialism, there was some political motivation, right? So we've got that nod to the other side. He still has an argument that he's making. In Jules Ferry's speech to the French Parliament, there's attribution. He describes the colonies as necessary to keep up with France's rivals. Ferry approaches his argument from the point of view of a Frenchman who is attempting to lead a country that has lacked political stability for the past century, so it makes sense that his focus would be to maintain France's political prominence. However, France's political prominence was also tied to economic prominence, so it still meant that economic pursuits were incredibly important in influencing imperialism. So we have a third really nice sourcing for point of view here. There's the document number at the end, a great best practice. And then similarly, Le Petit Journal shows an image of Queen Victoria and William II squaring off over a piece of cake. While this may seem like it would be a political battle, by the time the image was published in 1898, these nations were economic powerhouses hungry for more. Therefore, the fight over China would be largely economic because it would allow Britain to grow its Pacific empire, but could allow Germany to get in on the action, document 4. So wow, really, really excellent using supporting another document supporting the argument. It's really, really well done here in this paragraph. Pretty exceptional using all 5 documents.
And then Jordan's concluding paragraph. The new imperialism in the late 1800s, early 1900s was caused primarily by economic motives because of the opportunities imperialism provided to multiply the effects of the Industrial Revolution, as well as the fact that more desired territories to conquer were ones where money could be made, despite political motives playing a smaller part in fueling imperialist desires. We've restated our thesis. European countries would continue their fights over new territories up until the beginning of World War II. However, the strong economies built by these colonies would continue to impact who were major world powers even into the modern day. So we have context going forward as well. So this is a 10 out of 10. If we were wondering what does that look like, we definitely earned context, thesis, evidence from the documents, because we used, well, they used 5, but you only need to use 4, earning all the points there. Evidence beyond the documents, there were 2 points there. We did 3 sourcing attempts, needed 2. And so we have 2 points there, and we've earned the complexity point for a point. That's a 10 out of 10. So we had some questions. People were wondering what full samples look like. This would be an exemplar for sure. And
for
Jordan,
sure.
you are commended. That's a really nice essay.
Yeah, outstanding. Outstanding essay, Jordan.
All right, we're going to get into the exam logistics, and I think that's you, Katie. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully your teachers have gone over this with you. For every AP test, you're going to need an e-ticket. And so there's a couple of ways you can get this e-ticket. You can receive your e-ticket by email 2 days before each test. They are unique. You're going to get one for every exam. So if you have multiple exams, you're going to have individual tickets. So you need this e-ticket to check in for each exam you're registered for. So you can also, if you don't receive it in your email, you can also access your e-ticket in your student account on MyAP, and there's the link. And of course, you can always come back to this slide if this is something that you haven't gone over. This e-ticket is only for you. It is not transferable. Obviously, don't share your e-ticket with anyone. You could lose your chance to test. And at this point, we actually have had some students who have emailed and said that they really love doing DBQ, so they'd like to take the test now that they hadn't decided to take earlier. And unfortunately, they cannot accept any more registrations. And so you're going to make sure that you save your ticket when you get it. And if you look to the right, this is obviously not AP Euro, this is AP Bio. But when you get the ticket, that is how you're going to get to your exam, that yellow box you'll be clicking on. Perfect. So here, I know we've been saying this, you've been seeing us reference it every time we go over the calendar. And we are looking at a week from this Wednesday, May 13th where I am in Florida, it's 4 p.m. I know where Todd is, it's 3 p.m., but make sure you know your time zone and you're logging on to that exam to go through the procedures 30 minutes before at least. So for my students at 3:30 for that 4 p.m. exam, they'll be logging on, but wherever you're taking the test, just be mindful of your time zone and be there 30 minutes early. So if you don't take the test in May, you will, if you have some kind of conflict, if you look to the right there with your May e-ticket, you're automatically going to receive a ticket for the June makeup exam. All right. You can also request a ticket if something happens during your May exam, but that is not an automatic getting of your June ticket. So there's a process that you're going to have to follow for that. But if you do nothing with your May ticket and you don't test on the 13th, then you will get this ticket for the makeup day. And the makeup day is Tuesday, June 2nd, right? And if you take a look at the times again, I'm in the Eastern time zone, but I know we have lots of students that are on Pacific time. So just be mindful of what your time zone is, and you're going to check in 30 minutes prior. Just a quick, my own personal feeling about this. I really am encouraging my own students to, I know it's always like put off the test if you can. I don't think this is a good idea in any way. If something happens during your May administration, at least you have a backup. If you do nothing in May and you choose to take it in June and something goes wrong, there are no other opportunities to test after June 2nd. So I really, really am encouraging all of my students, actually telling them they have to take that test on May 13th.
Yeah, that's what we're telling our students as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so how to submit your response. We get a lot of questions about that. And so there are different ways that you can submit. The exam questions are viewed by students in a web browser. We recommend you use Chrome or Firefox. They say you cannot use Internet Explorer. I don't know anybody who still uses it, but apparently people still use it, but Chrome is probably the best browser. Students can type or write their responses outside of the browser. They can then choose from 3 options to submit responses. So you can type it on Google Docs, you could type it on Microsoft Word, and then you're going to choose how to submit your responses. You can copy and paste a typed response. You can attach, like if you wrote it in Word, you just want to attach a document. You can attach a typed response, or you can attach 1 or more photos of a handwritten response. Some of you are asking about handwritten response. And so you can do it that way. So option 1, copy and paste a typed response, then click submit. We recommend Google Docs or Word. Save your work often. Type in your AP ID and initials at the top of the response. Somebody was asking about that. So if you're thinking about saving time, you could have your document on that day up and ready. You could have it pre-saved. You could have your AP ID and initials. You could put it in at the top of the page. You could put it as a header so it appears automatically on every page, right? And then you're going to be waiting after you get into that the window. On the exam day setup side-by-side windows, you can do that. You can display the test questions in one window, right? And the documents, and then your document that you're typing on in the other window is what they're suggesting for that. So 2 windows side by side. Option 2 is to attach a document and then click submit. Again, they're still saying the 2 windows side by side, and one that shows you the timer and the documents, right? And then one that you're typing on. And then you would type your response, and then you just save it to one of those accepted file formats. Make sure your AP ID and initials at the top. When the timer has 5 minutes remaining, attach your response, click submit. Option 3, attach photos of a handwritten response. A lot of you still do handwritten response. I personally like reading those. But if you do this, it's a little trickier, I think, because you need a smartphone or tablet, because you can't use 2 devices, is my understanding. So you can't bring up the documents on a laptop, do handwriting, and then use a phone or tablet to take the pictures. So it needs to be the same device. So write your responses clearly with a dark pen or pencil. When the timer is 5 minutes remaining, take a photo of your response, and make sure you have those AP ID initials at the top of each page. 1 page per photo. If your response is longer than 1 page, you'll need to attach multiple photos, and you cannot exceed 5, and then click submit. Make sure to attach all of your pages before you click submit. If you click submit and you still have to attach files, you can't go back. So make sure all of your pages are in there and attached before you click submit. So exam day setup, you need a smartphone or tablet. Displays the test questions. You may need to scroll within a question. Displays the timer, used to take photos of written work, used to attach and submit photos of written work. So they can be handwritten, but this does seem a little riskier and a little clunkier to me.
Yep.
All right, so we're gonna go through the 5 steps. And Katie will take these. They are this: the review your contact information, check your tech, practice submitting response, gather the stuff you need, confirm your email ticket. So Katie will take you through the first 3.
So all of you have an AP login account. please make sure, go in there, make sure that the email that they have for number one is the email you want to get things to. Log in and make sure that that works, right? You're going to sign into My AP. You're going to confirm your email address, click your profile at the top right-hand corner and go to account settings. And if you need to change your email, click update, because that's really like the number one way you're going to get this ticket, although it should be there in your account as long as you can get into your account. In the subscriptions, confirm that you've checked the box to receive updates. It's important, getting your tickets an update. And then if you want, create a new contact with the email address in your address book, so that that collegeboard@e.collegeboard.org. And if you can't get the emails, don't worry, your e-ticket will still be there. If AP Euro is your first AP exam, that should be there on the 11th. So we have time for you to, between the 11th and the exam, to make sure you're getting that. So that's your first step that you're going to do. The second step you're going to do is you're going to check your tech. So figure out, you have to make a decision about the best way for you to do this, and choose your device. Check that you have the appropriate device for how you're planning to create your response. Lots of students have asked if we need the lockdown browser. You do not need to use the lockdown browser. You do need to remove Grammarly if you have it as a plugin on your computer. All right, so that's really important. If you're using that, please make sure that you uninstall that on your computer while you're taking the test. We don't need world language, so we can move on. And as you're choosing between handwriting and typing, keep in mind, there's no graphs or diagrams with AP Euro, but if you have any of these other tests like calculus, chemistry, or stats, you might be more comfortable handwriting your responses, but make sure again that you're limiting it to those 5 pictures, and you're going to have to scroll back and forth. So it might be a little clunky. For our exam, I kind of think doing it on a computer is really your best bet. That's just my personal preference, and I'm telling my students. All right, so you want to prepare your document. Obviously, one of the biggest things is time here. So figure out what kind of platform you're going to use. Are you going to use Google Docs, Microsoft Word, Notes, or something other than that? Auto save. I really think this is a good best practice. I'm really a fan of Google Docs because of this. Something happens and you lose your information, it's always there. If you're using a cloud document like Google Docs and you want to attach your document rather than cut and paste, remember that you'll need to download your response in one of the approved formats. So there it can be a PDF, it can be a doc, it can be a text, and you're going to save it. Before test day, prepare your documents by already typing your AP ID and your initials at the top. Why would you want to do that during the exam? And then save it to a clearly labeled folder so it'll be easy to find. And for AP English, and of course for our exam, there's just one document that you need to, but on the top of every page, you need that AP number and your initials. All right, so prepare, if you're gonna do handwriting, that's fine and that's okay. You're gonna use white paper, standard size, right? Normal 8.5 by 11, a number 2 pencil or a pen with black or blue ink. And because the maximum number of pages you can attach is 5, at most you'll need 5 pages for like AP history or English, but it's unlikely that you would need to use this many pages for your responses, which so that actually you may very well go into multiple pages for history. This is obviously a general slide. So just make sure that we're keeping that to 5 pictures.
Yeah, number your pages.
Yeah, definitely number your pages, just in case you by mistake, submit them out of order, we can find the correct order for sure. And then I've already gone to the demo. A couple of students have emailed wanting to know why there's 2 questions in the demo before I read through this. Don't worry, there's no second question for AP Euro, so it's just the one question. But I definitely recommend practicing doing that submission. So even starting today, it was also available last week. You can access the exam demo at cb.org/AP demo, and that will allow you to practice the different ways to submit your responses. If you can't connect to this demo from how you plan to test, that will be a problem. You'll not be able to access the real exam on test day. So update your browser perhaps, and then try again. And if you still can't access the demo, then you can reach out. Maybe your school or your AP coordinator can help make sure that you get that ready. Make sure that you can access that on test day, because that's how you're going to do the questions.
I'll take you through 4 and 5 really quick. This is what you need on exam day. So make sure you read through those things. You need your e-ticket. We're going to talk to you about, hey, get all these things ready out in front of you. Make sure your browser is Chrome. That's the one that's recommended. You need a device. Make sure you have a connection. If you have some type of an assistant technology that you need for your accommodations, make sure that's ready to go. As we've talked about, make sure you have this. You can use class notes or study guides. You can use textbooks and other classroom resources. You can use previous assignments or assessments. You can actually even search on the internet if you want, but I'm telling my students don't, because it's going to be a black hole. You're not going to find what you need. It's going to take too long, and the clock is ticking.
And you
So,
certainly can't copy and paste things from
oh
the internet.
no, absolutely not.
Very important.
Yep. Some of you ask if you can print your documents, and yes, you can. Somebody even asked, well, if my printer's in another part of the house and it's a long ways away, can my parent bring my printed response to me? Yes, they just can't talk to you about that or give you any advice or anything. But if they're handing off a printout, that's going to be fine. Okay. So you can print out the documents. That's something you can do. Optional resources, class notes are good. Textbook, other classroom resources, previous assignments, calculators you won't need. Shared study notes must be downloaded to a student's device to prevent collaboration violations. Okay. So that's just that about that. Internet searches will waste your time, put you at risk of an exam violation. So just don't do it. It's not worth it. And then look, step 5 then is May 4th. That's today. You're going to receive an exam confirmation email today, APID, list of exams you've registered for. In the meantime, you can always check which exams you're registered for in My AP. And then 2 days before each exam, you're going to get your exam personalized e-ticket and APID. Remember, you'll need to click your e-ticket containing your APID to access your exam. Clicking on the box on the ticket is how you get in. All right.
We're going to go quickly through these questions, and we'll just take them one at a time. Todd, you want to just kind of go back and forth, and we can?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So do I have to use my phone for the exam, or can I use my computer so I can see the docs more clearly, and then airdrop pictures of my essay to my computer to submit? So this was asked a couple of times in our meeting with Trevor Packer from the College Board, and I worry about the airdrop process of that and how much time that might take. What do you think, Todd? I know we're not supposed to really be using multiple.
I don't like the idea of using 2 devices because I think that's going to trigger security. And I also worry about airdrop.
Yeah, no, I understand that they're using the computer and then they're just using their phone for the pictures and getting those to the computer.
Right.
I just really worry about the connectivity and airdropping and the time of that. So that would be my concern.
Number 2, I've handwritten them all because that's how I took DBQs in school, and I prefer that format. I have access to materials so I can easily also type it. I was wondering if there's a benefit to doing it one way or the other. I want to make sure everything is legible and can submit it in time, but I'm just nervous about doing it on paper, not having enough time to scan, or the reader not being able to read. So it sounds like you're kind of leaning towards typing it. I recommend typing it, which is kind of sad because I like it when my students handwrite stuff. But this is the nature of this exam this year. And so that's what I'm recommending. Unless you know your speed is just so much better by handwriting, like it's significantly better, I would recommend typing it.
So, and I agree with you. And it's kind of funny because we have our kids practice handwriting all year because on a normal year, that is what they are obligated to do. But this is, unusual. So Todd already answered, can you use your notes in your textbook? Can you search the internet? The answer is yes, no cutting and pasting.
I was wondering for the AP exam if we had to put our browser on lockdown. The answer is no. If we're allowed to access the internet as notes since the exam is open book, yes, but it's not a good idea. Or if we're just limited to actually handwritten notes or in review books. Well, that's not exactly a great limitation, is it? You get first time ever, you get to use notes and books. Yeah. So I've been telling my students, we have study guides, we have notes, we have their book. And I said, just get those things open and ready and use those. I don't recommend going to the internet.
Should students label the parts of the exam given the time constraints? So Todd and I have been giving you these best practices for identifying your documents. I think that my personal opinion is worrying about the time. Move through the format kind of the way we've been showing you. And yes, let us know the documents as you're using them. But I don't know if you're worried about time that I would spend a lot of time labeling over getting points on the exam.
Which text editor would be better for writing the essay, Docs or Word? It's really your preference. I kind of like what Katie said about Google Docs always being auto-saved. So, and a lot of my students are really familiar with Google Docs.
Yep, and I'm a fan. How can we maximize our time if we're worried about not being able to complete a solid DBQ in 45 minutes? I think we gave you a couple options for that today, looking at potentially minimizing the number of documents that you use. I think that we will talk about that more a little bit on Wednesday as we're talking about the time. That's why I wanted to show you that one small, that one evidence where students didn't really dig deeply into the analysis, but they still did a good job. It's just practice with us tomorrow and Thursday.
You print off the DBQ to make notes or annotate it on the computer while sourcing the documents. You can't annotate it on the computer, but you can print it off and do notes that way. They did mention that there's not a way to really annotate, and they don't want you using any type of other, I don't know, app or something to annotate it on the computer.
Yep. So yes to printing.
Yes to printing, yeah.
I was told we'll have 45 minutes for typing our essay and 5 minutes to upload. If I choose to type the DBQ in a separate Google Doc and copy and paste it, well, I have to paste it before the 45 minutes is up. No, after the 45 minutes, you will have 5 minutes to submit that response. And at the end of that 50 minutes, then that is your time limit. So no, 45 minutes, there are 5 minutes to upload. And so you don't have to paste it in before that 45 minutes.
When I'm practicing for the DBQ, I find it difficult to switch back and forth between the documents in my paper as the pages will take a few seconds to load. Is there a possibility to be able to use multiple devices, or is there a certain layout that you would recommend? You cannot use multiple devices. So I don't know about layout. We've given you structure if that's what you're talking about, but you cannot use multiple devices. They've been really clear about that.
But you can certainly have different browsers open, right? So
yes, yeah.
And yes, you do, for number 11, you do need to put your AP ID and initials if you decide to copy and paste your response. Yes.
Does the DBQ need a title? No. Never. It doesn't.
5 or 6 different people ask that question.
Yeah.
So these are logistics. I hope we answered most of your logistical questions.
Yep. And so do you want to talk about the homework, Katie?
Yeah. So for the homework, we want you to go back and we want you to complete that checklist, those 5 steps that we just went over. I want you to download the checklist at cb.org/AP checklist, print or hand copy the AP exam checklist for each exam you're going to take, and fill in your 8-character AP ID code and make sure that you have that. That's all that you'll need is that ID code. You don't need any other information. People have asked if you'll need your school code. And I answered most of those just quickly. No, you just need that AP ID and you need your ticket. So that's it. That's your homework. So easy homework for today.
Yep. We're going to be sharing exam tips and reminders on Wednesday, May 6th. We'll talk through exam day procedures to help you feel ready. If you have specific questions, again, that you want us to address, send questions to this email, apeurovirtuallearning@gmail.com. Put the word question in the subject line. Please include your first name, school, state, or country. And then tomorrow is DBQ practice with me. DBQ practice on the 7th with Katie. Feedback. We're going to be ready to go. Shout outs today, Corona High School, Corona, California. Their mascot is Sammy the Panther.
Sammy.
Another shout out, Sioux City West High School in Sioux City, Iowa. They're the Wolverines. And then Solanco High School in Corryville, Pennsylvania. Your mascot is the Golden Mule, which I think that's just awesome. Scholar up, you guys, you got this. And we're getting close to being really ready to go. These are some links, important links. You can pause the video here if you want to read through this from College Board about all these things so that you feel super ready for the exam. Okay, we went long today, Katie, but there was a lot of information.
Good, but we are really looking forward to your practice tomorrow, Todd.
Yep, I'll be ready to go, and then you'll be with Katie on Thursday. So you guys have a great day. Sorry we went so long. Bye-bye.